Right, work holding. This is my little launch. Came with a few different styles of work holding, and to be honest, as an average user at home, a lot of the times these would never be used. I use some of them at work, various different styles, but I just thought I'd do a quick run through. So up first is your general 3-jaw chuck. As you can see, I've got a bar in it. 3 jaws because it has 3 jaws. These are very versatile. You can obviously hold on the internal, you can hold on the external. They have a scroll wheel in the middle, so as you do them up, they self-center. As you do them out, undo them, all 3 jaws open at the same time. They are as accurate as the scroll wheel and the jaws are together. They wear from use, they wear from age. They are what they are, essentially. They are 9 times out of 10 what you get with a lathe. If you buy a second-hand lathe, it normally comes with a 3-jaw. If you're lucky, you get a 4-jaw, and if you're even luckier, you might get some Collets. Your 3-jaw is a very versatile chuck. You can hold round, hexagon, you can make up sleeves, so you can hold square in a sleeve. Again, it's all down to how accurate your chuck is. A triangle is the strongest form. That's why tripods are always triangles. You can only get it as accurate as your jaws are. You then get self-centering, so this is a self-centering chuck. You can get adjustable 3 jaws, which are I think they're called like True Line or True Lock or something, where you can adjust it to bring it back in to adjust for that wear. They're very expensive, and at the end of the day it is only a 3-jaw. They're very convenient though, so you can clamp on the internal. I'll whip that out and we'll clamp on the external. So your internal clamping faces, these are your external. So again, quite versatile in the things that you can clamp with it. You can then get external jaws which face the other way. So you can then, so your jaw would be 180 degrees round, and that then enables you to hold on the outside of larger objects, but all within the, you know, the diameter of the chuck body. Very, very useful tool. And again, most hobbyists, that's all you'll get with your chuck anyway. Up next you've got your 4-jaw. Obviously your 4 jaws are independent. Each jaw has a adjuster. These wind in and out, you can flip them 180 degrees. So a 4-jaw chuck is extremely versatile. You've obviously got the options to hold square, rectangles. You can put a part in, an offset hole, so you're not drilling on the centre line. You can turn eccentrics in it. They are very versatile and a very useful item to have. I don't actually have one for the little launch. This is one I had off of a South Bend, I think, that didn't go with it. If a lot of people will say anything you can do with a 3-jaw I can do with a 4-jaw, 90% of the time that is correct. The only thing is, with your 4-jaw, everything you hold has to be indicated in because you can set it anywhere. The downside is they can't hold hex. You can't clamp 6 sides with 4 jaws. You can't clamp a denomination of 6 with 4. It just doesn't work, so that is a downside of it. But again, very versatile in their use and very accurate, as long as the person clocking it in is accurate. So if you know what you're doing, you can crack out some brilliant bits of work with one of these. I think in a previous video on my Denford, I turned a back plate because the 4 jaw was the only chuck big enough to hold it. To hold it, and screw cut it in that. I do quite enjoy dialing in a 4 jaw. It's a good skill to have. I don't do as much of it as I used to at work, so it's quite good to do it at home when you can. Like I say, the downside is you have to be able to hold on 4 sides or 4 of 8 or 12. There are some ways round that, as I'm sure you can figure it out, but generally it is what it is. So this is between centres. You have a centre up the headstock, you have a centre in the tailstock, and this is your piece in the centre. This is not the optimum way to do it. Ideally you'd have a live centre this end, dead centre this end, so that when this spins, the part spins. I've just got a well, this is a Morse taper 1 to 1 inch lathe socket, just whatever I had that had a centre in each end. Again, this is a very accurate way of turning because you are between 2 centres. It takes all of the wear, all of the slop of a chuck out. Even if your tailstock is out, you are still between 2 points, so it will be turned on that same axis. You can get yourself in trouble there if you're too far out and you know your carriage is moving in this axis. You are going to get a taper. Yeah, it's quite good. Used for gun barrels and stuff. Certain things like motor armatures, because they're so accurate. Things that run at high speed are always turned between centres. This is one setup. Like I say, you would normally have a dead centre here. I haven't got one that fits. Sorry, you would normally have a live centre here. I haven't got one that fits this. I will then go to the next setup for centres, so don't jump the comments and say this isn't the right way, because as long as you've got enough pressure on here with a dead centre, with a live centre, let me start that again. As long as you've got enough pressure on here with a live centre and a dead centre this side, this part will turn. It's not going to work with big things, but it does work with small parts, and I've used it very successfully turning barrels and certain things like that. Right, so this is very vague because every setup is different, but the idea is you have a drive plate, which is this here, with a lug sticking out. This one is just tapped for bolts, so that's what some of them have pins in and whatever. Your chuck also works. If you want to index something 3 times, a chuck would do that. A 4 jaw would do that as well, as long as the centre fits up the middle of the chuck. So same part, obviously it's got a slot in it. you would have a drive dog. I don't actually seem to have any to hand, they must be in my toolbox at work. But all it does is it clamps over and it's big enough to catch on the drive peg. And now that is driven. If you hit reverse, it does a rotation and reverses. Now obviously you wouldn't turn a part with a bolt in it. This is purely for demonstration purposes. You would have a drive dog that clamps over here. I'll insert a picture. This is, like I say, just demonstration. But that is now driven off of the headstock. You don't need as much pressure on here and it will drive your part. The downside is wherever you cannot turn past the drive dog, so you could turn a register at the front, you could flip it around, reset your drive dog and turn the other side. That is the downside of a setup like this. If you were turning a full part, you'd use the previous setup. Right, the next setup is Collets. Got one in here. Obviously this is the centre that came with the lathe, fits in, and then is tightened on the hand wheel at the back. That then you can hold various work pieces. It's always got to be the shape of the collet though. You can't, they're always, you know, if you've got round collets, the diameter inside has a very specific clamping diameter. So this one's got 150 stamped on it. Genuine Lorch. They are a very accurate work holding device, but as you can see they are split halfway down, which means when you pull it in, your clamping force is at the front edge. So this is a Lorch style collet, which seals on the nose taper. You get something like an ER32 collet, which are split differently, and they are much better if you buy a genuine one. If you buy a Chinese collet, unfortunately, in my experience, they are pants. They'll get you by, but if you can afford to buy collets as you need them, buy branded collets. They are far more accurate. And the ER style, hit the tripod, the ER style collets are actually more accurate than these because of the way these just pinch on the front. An ER collet pinches on a lot more of the work. You can get these with triangles in them, you can get more hexes in them, you can get more squares in them. It's very expensive because you need one for each size, but they're very accurate. It is what it is. You don't tend to see this style, or to be honest, I've only ever seen hex collets, square collets. And that was on a collet chuck for a Harrison M300 lathe. It came from the MOD and had a full set of every collet you could possibly get. So yeah, this is what your standard collet. It's very accurate. You know, you can go right down. You can buy ones that are blank that you drill out yourself to hold a specific diameter. Yeah, this would be the next step up from a 4-jaw in terms of if you needed that level of accuracy. This is a large faceplate. I've pretty sure this is a bowl turn and wood turning attachment for it, because it's got the wood turning attachments for it. But something like this, a lot of faceplates come slotted. I've got one of those that doesn't fit this lathe, which I will show you and insert here. This again, if you was going to turn a bowl, you'd bolt your piece of wood to it, or metal, whatever, and turn. You can also clamp over the top, clamp a workpiece to it. Again, all has to be registered in. So this is the style of faceplate that you would ideally end up with. You can bolt anything to here, clamp it on, clock it in with your dial. This isn't for this lathe, this is off of a, I don't know, it came with some box of bits I bought, but obviously you got all your holes. You'd put your bolts in through it, you'd clock it in and turn it like that. Fantastic way of holding larger items, obscure items, but they all need to have either a flat face to register on the flat face, or a registerable surface, I shall say. You can do some bizarre setups using this. There have been some fantastic setups done. You don't tend to see it too much anymore with how cheap mills are, but back in the day when the Myfords were first about, the setups that people did was just to get it done. You had your lathe, it cost you a fortune, you just made it work. So I've now fitted a nose cone adapter. This is also a protector. If you run your centre up the middle, it stops the threads getting damaged. It's also a spreader. For that style of collet. These are known as, watchmakers, or step collets, or expanding collets. So you have this style. You obviously, all your parts, it is limited to the steps you have. You have a limited clamping range. So if you had a small ring, you'd fit it over, and you can do very minute details clamping on the internal of a piece. They are extremely expensive for what they are, but they are also very accurate. And you can also hold thin wall stuff with them, so that is why you tend to find a lot of watchmakers use them. That's not something I've ever come across in my working career. It's something I've only ever messed around with when I've had a lathe what's had them. These came with the Lorch. I've got a full set of what Lorch sold. I've also got the external type, which I'll fit and show you those as well. So this is the internal style of step collet. You can obviously index your part on whatever ring fits, and again, limited clamping force, so you're limited to the depths of ring you have, but again you can hold very thin pieces of work right down to very small pieces of work, or as large as this will take, which I think is 3 inch. Again, you tend to buy them as an internal set and external set. You need the opener or the closer with it, which then has to match your spindle thread. Like I said, they tend to just be used by watchmakers or people doing small intricate parts. It's not something you see very common. I've actually been offered almost 3 times what I paid for the lathe just for the Collets. Full sets don't come up for sale very often, and you tend to find people will be chasing for them because they were never really bought with the lathes. Yeah, there are a fantastic bit of kit, but they are limited in use. You can only hold round things on them. It is what it is. They are just another form of work holding. So yeah. So you've also got cross slide mounted. So this would be like a milling operation. You can have milling attachments, you have face plates, you hold your milling cutter in your headstock. If you wanted to put a slot in here, you bring it up, you can use both of your travels and set your cut that way. It's not something you see too often now, but again, back in the day it was a necessity. Like I said, you don't see it because of how cheap mini lathes are, mini mills are now, but it does get the job done in certain operations. You clamp your part. I've just got a bit of flat in here. You'd clamp your part down and milling cutter in the headstock, and you just work in reverse essentially, bringing the work to the cutter rather than the cutter to the work. So I hope that actually helps someone out. There are more ways of doing things, I'm sure. These are the ones I've come across, and the ones I've used myself. Some are generally used a lot more than others. Your 3-jaw is probably the most used work holding that you'll ever use. After that, for me, it was Collets, then the 4-jaw. I've only ever used a faceplate twice, and then obviously you'd have between centres as well, which I've used, well, I don't know, over 100 times I'd say I've turned between centres. And again, it is just getting the right setup for the equipment you have, for the job you've got to do. There is more than one way to do everything. You just need to find the right way. I hope this has been some help, and if you've got any other suggestions or ways of doing things, put it in the comments. Take care.